one chap I remember, he said, I've got some programs in my garage. I don't want to throw them away. Do you want them? And I thought, yeah, that would be a good idea. So I called in at his house, and he literally had half his garage full of boxes of My wife lost her mind. The programme is essentially a record of that moment in time.
Can the printed Matchday programme survive in the digital age?
I'd like to think so, but obviously, in theory, you've got all the information you need in the palm of your hand on a phone. It's a big call for the club, any club, to decide to carry on printing them.
It's more than a hobby, isn't it?
It's definitely more than a hobby, yeah.
Ian, every Albion fan will have read you in the Matchday magazine, but they may not know everything about you. Just tell us who you are and what you've done with your life.
Well, in terms of the Albion, I've been a fan since 1968. Grew up in Sussex, moved around a bit after that. I'm now currently living in Cornwall, so getting to see the games is a bit more tricky. But
7-hour commute.
Just a bit, yeah. When we were moving down, I tried to work out if I could do it there and back in a day on the train, but it's just not possible now. But so long time Albion fan, I suppose. Regard myself technically semi-retired now, but the book has been taking up a lot of my time over the last couple of years.
So the book is Brighton and Hove Albion, an illustrated history of the Matchday Programme. Yep. Now that only just scratches the surface, really, because you are an archivist, historian, but above all, a massive programme collector with a house the size of a warehouse, presumably.
Storage unit, the size of a
the bed in the
container. Yeah, it's been a long time in the building. When we moved to Cornwall a couple of years ago, I had to cull a few boxes of them, but I've still got the main bulk of the collection with me in Cornwall. So yeah. But
how did you decide what was culled and what wasn't?
Yeah, that was a tricky one. I first of all got rid of all the doubles because as over the last few years I've been, in order to get one, you quite often have to buy 50. So someone says that sells a bundle of programs from a particular season, and you need one to complete your set, but you've got to buy the whole lot.
So you won't get it on the match day? You won't get somebody that's there that you know from a match day and just give you one? A
lot of the time, yes.
Okay.
But when you're going back to some of the old ones, you'd have to rummage around a little bit. So I built up this huge, and people used to get hold of me when I launched my website a few years ago. A few people used to get hold of me saying, look, I've got one chap I remember, he said, I've got some programs in my garage. I don't want to throw them away. Do you want them? And I thought, yeah, that would be a good idea. So I called in at his house, and he literally had half his garage full of boxes of My wife lost her mind when I brought those. I said, don't worry, my love, I'll sell most of them. But of course you never do, and sorted them through, swapped out some that were in better condition than the originals that I had.
It's a marriage ender, that is.
Well, she's amazing, so she's sort of allowed me to feed my passion.
So at what point did this turn from, I imagine, what was once a hobby a long time ago to something bigger and something that's developed into what you've got today?
Yeah, well, I think initially I started collecting back in the 60s, sort of in conjunction with my first game. And at that time, you just pick up anything. There were loads of program dealers, send you a stamped addressed envelope and we'll send you a bundle of 20, that kind of thing. So I used to collect anything and everything. When I got to become a teenager, it was, I want to collect at least one program from every club in the league every season. But sooner or later, with programs, bearing in mind however many games there are every week, it's almost impossible to keep up with unless you decide to specialise. So in the early 70s, by that time, I'd started going to see Albion every week. So it was logical to specialise in Albion programmes, and that's where it kind of grew from there, really.
You haven't made a living out of this. This is purely a hobby, presumably.
Oh, purely a hobby, yeah. There's very few people, I think, who make an actual living out of programmes. I do a bit of a eBay side hustle, but certainly not enough to make a living now.
But you can't rank it as a hobby It's more than a hobby, isn't it?
It's definitely more than a hobby. Yeah, absolutely. And I think you speak to any collector, they'll say no, it is more than a hobby, especially when you're trying to find an elusive program. You know, you're trawling auction houses and eBay, obviously, and program fairs. I mean, I don't really get involved too much in that now, but back in the day, that was quite a big part of it.
You must have so much you never look back at. Do you only kind of look forward and try and like if you complete a year or something,
yeah,
you'll never look back and reflect on that year. Will you ever get that box out and have a look back through?
Sometimes. What you've just said is, my wife quite often says that, why do you need to keep them?
I'm sorry, I'm giving her ammunition on the podcast.
That's okay. We've had this conversation a lot of times, but I mean, I do enjoy looking back on them, particularly. I mean, obviously the research for the book was a great opportunity to look at them, but yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I don't look at them very often, but I do every now and again. So that's my justification for keeping them in my.
Glenn, do you remember this culture? Were you part of it?
So,
did you buy programs when you were a kid going to games?
Do you know what? As Ian was talking, I was thinking about this, and I think it's something that's dying with like Scandinavian minimalist living. I don't think it's generations do it, do they? And like obviously everything's on your phone, like kind of People don't necessarily want clutter kind of thing around them.
They don't read anymore either.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah. I did collect something, but this speaks volumes of my youth, really. I used to collect beer mats because I was always in the pub with my dad.
Which ground are we talking about? Where was this?
Just pubs.
No, oh yeah, sorry, but which games did you go to as a kid where you would have picked up a program?
Oh right, as programs. So my local team, Carl United. And then I would get down to Old Trafford quite regularly. My uncle had a season ticket. And yeah, I kind of collected them. And you know what? I've still got some of them on the loft. But with all honesty, I mean, I need to throw them away. I've never looked at them in 20 years.
Give them to Ian.
Yeah.
If you want them, you can have them. No problem at all.
Because I mean,
no, there's a price, obviously.
Yeah, nothing's free. I mean, because obviously for most people, I'm instantly back in that world where I'd read the program on the train home or the bus home, and it was a magical thing. You read it after the game. I would anyway, and so, but that.
Hold on a second. Can I just jump in there?
Yeah, by all means.
But is it not like? Is it not almost dead? Is it not of that moment kind of thing? Do you know like if so now if you put it into like media terms and TV terms, if you do like a build up to this weekend's Premier League weekend of fixtures, after you've watched that on a Friday or a Saturday morning at 3:00, that media is now dead. It's got no relevance.
Well,
so is that not like what a program once was?
But if you've got a half-hour bus or train ride home, if you really love the club, you start reading about the youth team and you start reading the interviews and picking up bits and bobs of news and ticket news and stuff. So you carry on digesting it long after the game.
Yeah, but you're adding to my point that it's like it's got a certain like
brief shelf life.
Yeah. Like after if you read it on the bus on the way home. Once you've taken that information in, you've got no reason to revisit it, have you?
No, I suppose you put it on a shelf then.
Sorry,
I mean, what do you think, Ian?
Well,
sorry, we're just having an argument between
no,
us.
that's. I see exactly where you're coming from, because the programme is essentially a record of that particular game and that moment in time. And back in the late 19th century, when these things first came out, they were literally just little cards. Because back in those days, you didn't have the kit, so you had to have some method of recognising the players. Now an opposition player dribbling down the wing, you think, oh, who's that, number 67 or whatever, and you look it up in the programme. And it was the same back then. But what you've also got is the snapshot of life, particularly in the old. And one of the things I love about them is the fact that you can pick up a program, say 1965, say, and there's cinema listings, so you can see what people were seeing in the cinema, the theatre listings, the adverts for the predominantly local companies were very prevalent in Brighton's programme. And whilst you don't get that so much these days with all the global nature of the sport and the global advertising, program editors now, their big task is to make that relevant, not only with the instant stuff, which is the information on the team, the statistics which go out of date immediately, and the manager's notes, but the other content, the padding stuff. And I think, I mean, maybe I would say this because I contribute to it, but the historical piece, which has become more and more prevalent recently with the programs, looking back, I mean, it's great to look back, and you can dip into that. You know, you can go pick it up in a few weeks' time. Like the other day, I was looking back on a couple of programs from your first spell at the club, Glenn, and you know, you did this weird kind of A to Z thing, looking about your boyhood club and favourite food, lasagna, I think it was back. But
they all
always cultured.
Well, it beats some of the ones from the 80s where you had steak and chips and that was it.
Yeah, I remember those. Favourite TV programme, Starsky and Hutch.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So, but why did it become such a passion for you to do this?
To do the book, or
no, just to collect and to become this archivist.
I don't know. It's difficult to describe, really. I think, like many kids growing up in the 60s, you know, I mean, Glenn, you've mentioned the beer mat collecting, you know, I think we've kind of all done that, but I think kids have this collecting gene in them. And whether it's stamps or, you know, bus tickets or beer mats or whatever, you know, we've all got it in us. And for me, it just happened to be programs. And I think when I was growing up in the 60s, my dad was a rugby man, but he recognised in me my love for the round ball, and he kind of fed that. So he'd buy me the magazines. I mean, we didn't have the internet back then, obviously, so it was Charles Buchan's Football Monthly, Goal magazine, Shoot magazine, a bit after that. And I had this incredible thirst for the game. I didn't, you know, I wasn't really affiliated, if that's the right word, to a particular club, so I just wanted to learn everything about the game. And it was only when I came to the game in 1968 that my first game that I then was able to continue that passion for the game, but focus that on a passion for a club. And I just love the programs as a representation of where that club was at any moment in time.
Yeah, and a snapshot of society, as you said.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a big fascination for me, especially the older programs when the football club was much more of a local focus within the community. So the 16-page program from Albion in the 50s, for example, you'd have adverts for all the main tailor, Jaeger, Horn Brothers, and then the local chemists, the local news agents, and then any number of tobacco retailers. And it was exactly that, a snapshot of life in this vibrant seaside town. The theatre listings immediately after the war are absolutely fascinating.
It was the same in the cinema, wasn't it? Before a film, you'd see adverts for the local Indian restaurant, local, you know,
the sheepskin shop.
Yeah, the sheepskin shop.
Hold on a second. What, they wouldn't film an advert? It would just be like a written advert.
Yeah, it would be like a still picture up on the screen. You know, for all your sheepskin needs, go to sheepskin so and so. You know, 25.
They didn't show you. They never showed you films like
not like now, where you get clips of Hollywood blockbusters and stuff. No, it's amazing.
It was adverts for Mr. Clive.
And would people turn up early for that?
Yeah. It was quite painful, actually, because it used to go on for ages. But at least you knew what the best Indian restaurant was locally at the end of it. But
you've obviously built up one of the most complete archives of Brighton Hove Albion programmes out there. The club won't have one, will they?
The club don't have a collection. The Albion Heritage Society do. They've got a bigger and more comprehensive collection than mine, certainly. And there are a few other big Albion collectors. My collection of actual programs is really post-war. So I've had help in terms of supplying images for the book, certainly, and for my website, from other Brighton collectors who maybe specialise in pre-war stuff. There's a chap who specialises just in wartime programs. which is another fascinating aspect of the whole thing, in that football A carried on during the war, and the programmes printed on flimsy, almost tissue paper because of the paper rationing. But again, they had adverts for all the local pubs that were open, you know, despite the blackout, we are open kind of thing. So it was almost in the war, like a morale booster, using the programme. So I mean, my collection is comprehensive, but not, I mean, post-war for me.
So when you look at your collection, where do you want your collection go to one day? Like, what will you do with it? Because it's obviously a body of work that's been a lifetime's work.
Yeah.
Because I know if you leave it to the wife, she's just got
no chance. Well, we got 4 children, and one of those, when I was talking to you earlier, he's our kind of number 3, and he'll be with me at the game tomorrow. He's the one who's really kind of carried on the Albion mantle. So I'd like to think that he'd take him on. Yeah,
it's an unfair question in a book of more than 1,600 illustrations and 400 pages. But if you could pick out a favourite programme, a favourite image, what would it be?
I think it will always be the programme from my first game.
Oh yeah,
simply because of the kind of sentimental background to that, and the fact that it was my first game, and the story behind it. Really, my godfather's brother played for Torquay United. Robin Stubbs. He's a bustling sort of centre forward in the mid to late 60s, and Torquay were playing Brighton. We lived in Bognor, and my godfather said, "Look, Robin's playing at Brighton a couple of nights. Do you fancy it?" So, yes, of course. So me, my dad, my godfather, and my best friend from primary school went along, and it was, it was amazing. That feeling of seeing the ground and walking up. I mean, you wouldn't have played at the Goldstone.
No, never visited it.
It had this big wooden stand on the west side, and you go up the steps, and it's like you come over. It's almost like coming over the parapet of a hill. And it was a midweek game, so the floodlights were on. I mean, by today's standards, there'd be like 4 candles in the corner of the ground, but you had this expanse of green, and for the 9-year-old me, I mean, I get sort of goosebumps thinking about it now, because with the book and everything, I've been asked quite a bit about this, and I just fell in love with the game even more. But then the club, it was fantastic. So, in terms of a special programme, and it's not particularly rare, it's not particularly different, but the one from my first game, yeah, definitely.
You're quite lucky to. Not lucky, but you chose a particularly interesting club to collect programs under you, because the club's had a very eventful history, not necessarily in the success sense, but a hell of a lot has happened since. Well, it was the 28th of August 1968 when you walked into the Goldstone Ground for the first time. Yeah, and it's a very atmospheric club. It's a club full of characters and stories, and so you've had a good story to collate, haven't you? Really?
Definitely, and I think that's one of the things that helped me really when I was preparing the book, because I didn't want it to be a straightforward chronology. We talked about the history thing before, and it wasn't about Orwell in 1968. It was a blue cover with the insert 16 pages, and then the following year, I didn't want that. I mean, that is a big part of the book, but I wanted to break it up with other sections. So there's a section on the players, how the player profile has been treated over the years, the managers, similarly how the managers' notes have evolved over the years, and then in Albion's case, there's a big section on the fall and rise of the programme, coinciding with all the stuff in the mid-90s, and then how, when Dick Knight took over, how the programme was used to help rebuild the bond between the club and the fans, which had just kind of disappeared. So
it's been a really important...
Exactly, and also the fight for Falmer as well, because that was not a smooth process, as you both know very well. And the programme was a key part of that, because the programme was used as the call to arms for people to go on marches and send in letters to John Prescott and what have you. And it was also an information conduit for the results of the public inquiry, for example. So it was a key element of that process in terms of the information gathering and enabling the fans to stay involved in the whole process. So there was lots of opportunity for me to sort of move away from the straightforward chronology of it.
Yeah.
So when we talk about the book, part of the proceeds go to the foundation and the Albion Heritage Society. Why was that so important?
Well, I think in terms of the Albion Foundation, I mean, for years now, they've been doing so much great work in the community, and football clubs, despite what you might see with the kind of global reach and the maybe the disconnect now with all the money and everything, but they are intrinsically a focal point within a community. So for that work to be carried out in the community is very important. So I wanted that to be reflected. And also the Heritage Society is very important to me and to a number of people, because it's the history of the club is any club, not just Brighton, but it's so important, because you need to have an appreciation of what's gone on in the past in order to appreciate where we are now. I mean, we talk a lot, watching us run out at the Amex, thinking back to, oh my God, 30 years ago, we were trotting out at Priestfield in front of 900 people, and it is just such an important part of the development of a club to maintain and be aware of the history and the heritage of the club. So again, I wanted to.
Yeah, well said. And finally, Ian, a question that Glenn just hinted at: can the printed Matchday programme survive in the digital age?
Well, the easy answer to that, I think, is I'd like to think so, but obviously, Glenn mentioned it earlier. You've got in theory, you've got all the information you need in the palm of your hand on a phone, all the stats you need. So in order for the printed programme, you've got to produce something that's unique, and that is looking at the artwork on the cover, for example. And I think the last couple of seasons at Brighton have been fantastic. The sort of cartoon superhero type covers of last season, and then this season, in the run up to the 125th anniversary next summer, they've got the same illustrator, Jamie, who's fantastic, looking at old programme covers but re-imaging them in the modern day. And then inside the programme, you've got to have that unique content. I mentioned the historical content. Spencer Vigner's does these fantastic articles and interviews with old players, and people do like that. I do my piece on, normally it's on old programmes from games against that day's opposition, and I do get feedback from that. People say, "Oh, I remember that game." So I think they can survive. Obviously, it's a big call for the club, any club, to decide to carry on printing them. I love books and the printed books, but I've also got a digital library subscription. So, it's a bit of a
foot in both camps.
Yeah. Well,
it was definitely
exactly. I do love the feeling of picking up a book, and similarly with the program. I mean, I'd much rather pick up the program, but the onus is on the clubs to make sure that the content of that, you don't want to open it up and just see, say, 50 pages out of 68 as advertising, but it's the advertising that helps to pay for generated programs. So it is a difficult one, and I hope that they continue. But
long may they live, because can you imagine a situation where you look around a stadium and there are 30,000 people all looking at their phones to get the team news and the stuff that's in the programme? Much nicer to see people reading the programme.
That's every weekend, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's modern life.
You've only got to get on a train or on the tube, and everyone's got that over.
I know. Well, as a newspaper man, I can vouch for that. You don't see people reading newspapers very much anymore. But
before we let you go, Ian, while you've got a bit of a reach on this podcast, If
Okay.
there's one programme out there that you need, or a couple of programmes out there, it's a call to arms that anyone who might have it, what would that programme be?
Well, I think the holy grail for Brighton collectors is the programme from the Charity Shield in 1910.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, pre-war.
Yeah.
Okay.
So super rare. There is an image in the book which was provided by one of the main. I mean, I've got to give a shout out to Peter Irvine, who is probably the kind of doyen of Brighton programme collectors, certainly. But yeah, that would be the holy grail for programme collectors. I think the first game in 1920 as a Football League club, that again would be another one that would be,
There you go. That's
very
Brighton's
expensive.
biggest trophy win, I think, the Charity Shield.
Well, and I think, it's all a bit of a joke in some respects. It's the only major trophy, but ultimately it's a trophy. There was a programme. The problem was the game is played at Stamford Bridge, so it's the Chelsea Chronicle at the top of the page. So that sort of takes away from it slightly, but yeah, that would be mine.
Right. Well, if anyone's listening to this and they have a copy of the 1910 Charity Shield programme, give it to Ian.
Thank you very much.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I've
for
just got
joining
some
us.
quick fire questions quickly for you, Ian,
Okay.
that we do to all our guests.
Okay,
Favourite Albion kit of all time?
that's a tricky one. I think I'd probably come down on the Buckter kit, the blue and white striped Buckter kit from the sort of mid to late 70s. That would have been the first one I owned. I mean, it was this horrendous sort of scratchy nylon too, and if you didn't put a t-shirt on underneath, you were struggling. But yeah, I think that would probably be my favourite kit.
One match you wish you could go back and experience again?
It would probably be a game I didn't experience because I was working in Jersey at the time, and that would be the Liverpool FA Cup game in 1983 when Liverpool were carrying all before them. Absolutely amazing team to watch, and we beat them 2-1. So yeah, that game probably.
Albion hero growing up?
Brian Horton.
VAR, yes or no?
Yes, but they need to cut down on the time it takes to reach the decisions, and the other bugbear is getting the way VAR is used for offsides. My way of thinking would be similar to athletics, it's the chest going over the finishing line, do that for offsides, not technically
Not your foot.
No, technically someone with size 11 feet would be offside more often than someone with size 8, for example. So, I mean, I know that's a sort of extreme and slightly ridiculous way of looking at it. But
So you're saying chest?
Yeah,
Well, I think we'd see a lot more goals if that were the case.
yeah,
Which
And
is
that-
why
and
which is
that's
why
we
we go.
go to
Yeah.
the games.
Yeah. Okay, final word then, Ian. Remind us of the title of the book and where people can buy it.
Okay, well, it's Brighton Hove Albion, an illustrated history of the Matchday Programme. It's a big coffee table size book, so ideal Christmas present. Price £35. It's available in the club shop to pre-order now. It's also available on my website, www.seagullsprograms.co.uk.
Brilliant. Well, we hope it flies, and thanks for joining
Thank
us.
you.